So, yes, welcome everybody. Welcome here. What a great thing to be here, speaking, sharing, and just being here today with this entity of a message: vulnerability, power, and possibilities. Oh, it's like making a cake. Let's put these three into the cake and see what comes out. So we're going to see what comes out of this cake and feel into this right now. And I think a really great place for me to begin is with this. I was given this when I became a practitioner in 2017. I don't know if you can read this. It says, dream. If you can dream it, you can do it. Dream. And this is with me. It's been with me ever since, in my room here, near me, close to me. If you can dream it, you can do it. Dream. And I wanted to share about this and go deep into this because the two songs have just been so perfect. You know, why save it for sleep when you can be living, could be living your daydream? Why save it for sleep? Well, I'm going to talk about that also, why save it for sleep. And we can change the world right here and right now. We can change our world right here and right now. And that's what we're going to do in this moment. I saw on Instagram this morning, the perfect thing popped up on Instagram. It was a quote by Joan Rivers that said, life doesn't get any better than this. I want to tell you something. Life doesn't get any better than this. We get better. Whoo, that really, it's like, okay, that's another way of hearing it, of hearing as I believe it to be, so it is. As I think it, so it is. As I think my world is, so it is. Life doesn't get any better. We get better. We get better at it, at involving ourselves in the spiritual practices and these glorious opportunities that we have to grow and expand and evolve. We're all always evolving anyway, so we might as well do it in a really powerful way and harness that power that we have, that I know of as the divine, whatever we choose to call this creative intelligence and the law that is working 24/7. It doesn't go to sleep. It's always happening and responding to our beingness and our container of how we bring ourselves into this life. We are always being heard, even if we don't think we are. We truly are. So if you can dream it, you can do it. Oh, this takes me back to that childlike energy of magical kind of fairies and miracles, and anything is possible. It's really amazing. You know, I live here by the beach, really literally opposite the beach. And often I go down onto the beach and there are young families and children running around. And I think to myself, and they're up to all these things and just no fear, jumping off of the groins and, you know, chucking stones into the sea and just being free and playing. And where did we lose that sense, or where did sometimes I ask myself, where have I lost that sense of playfulness? Because I believe that as a 58-year-old, life is like this. And I have to retrain myself to open up to realizing and knowing that life is this, it's infinite possibilities. And yet there can be a tendency to come away from that childlike playfulness and knowing that all in God, all is possible. I mean, I say it all the time, and in treatment, I'm saying it. In God, all is possible. But do I really believe that? And if I do, to what degree do I believe it? Where can I play with that and push the boundaries? Okay, in God, all is possible. Let's test this. And as Reverend Gina said at the very beginning, beautiful Reverend Gina, who introduced the mission and vision and purpose and what Science of Mind really is. It is a philosophy. It is a deep dive into all religions, faiths, ways of being in this life, and spirituality. And in knowing that there is a common thread, and that is love. And that is that we are really dealing with something that we're dealing with ourselves when we deal with the divine. So did you know that there are, and I was told this about 10 years ago, there'd been a study in Oxford University here in the UK. They put a whole kind of cohort of students through this study of how many ways are there to do the washing up. And it came out with this group, there were over 275 ways to do the washing up. Well, I'd never thought about that before because I thought, why would I think about that? And yet, when I really did start feeling into that, okay, so there are 275 ways that we know of in this one study to do the washing up. That could mean there are over 275 ways to make a bed or to clean our teeth or to show love. There are so many different ways of being with the one thing that we are choosing to be on a moment by moment basis. There's a quote that I learned in ministerial education, and it was in a philosophy class. And I loved those classes because we looked back at the Greek philosophers of the early Greek philosophers. And there was one called Heraclitus, and he sat and looked at fire for hours and hours and hours. And he came up with this, knowing that this fire is the fire of life. And that in this, as this fire, all is known. He called it the logos. Everything is known as the one in this fire. And he wrote many, they were called fragments. And they were kind of like affirmations of the time. And one of them that he wrote was, it is into the same river twice, it is not possible to step. It's not possible to step into the same river twice. A little bit like there are 275 ways to do the washing up. There are infinite ways to show love and to be love for ourselves and our lives. And I'm asking, how could it be to be the walking experiment if science of mind is based on science and philosophy and religion and spirituality? Then we're being invited to be that spiritual experimenter for our lives and to test these principles, not just to accept them, not just to say, yes, somebody said it and so it's true, to actually be the walking kind of template and say, yeah, I'm going to be the one that proves it. I'm going to prove this, not for anybody else, not to keep someone else happy, our parents in our minds, or our children, or our partners, or our friends, or our work colleagues, or our spiritual community, to actually be bold enough and vulnerable enough to say, I'm going to test this out for me. I'm going to prove these principles for my life. And I'm going to slowly, step by step, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat, see how they work and work with them and let them work with me. Allow them, be open, be vulnerable. I think this is the first key piece, is this willingness to open our hearts, to know that in God and as God, all is possible. And then to say, yes, I'm willing to test this out, to be the living experiment. And this means being vulnerable. This means laying our hearts on the line and saying, I'm prepared to put aside everything I thought I knew. I'm prepared to do it again. And why not? Because I know that in every moment, there is this infinite possibility to do it again. There are infinite ways of doing it in the moment. And yet we get caught up in a loop of how it was is how it is. And that because how it was is how it is, I'm not going to go to how it could be. How it was is how it is. And so because of that, I'm just staying here. I'm not going to take that leap of faith. 3 years ago, when I found myself, and I'm taking full responsibility for this, and I have done, I found myself sitting in the car next to my beloved Jason. At that time, we weren't married, and yet we were. You know what I mean? And yet we were sitting there in the car next to each other. Picture this. Well, maybe not too deeply, but just get the vibe of this. Sitting there in the car. The car, thank goodness, was an estate car, and it was filled with every single possession that we had. And as filled as the car was as empty as our wallets were. And we were sitting there together, not having a home of our own. And we looked at each other. I was in the passenger seat, he was in the driver's seat. And we were stationary because we'd just come out of somewhere that we were living. And we looked at each other and we both said together, now what? Where do we go? Do we get to the end of the road and go left, or do we go right? We were both flummoxed. And I said, I know that by tonight, we may think that we haven't got anywhere to stay, and yet I am claiming it, and I know it. I know that by tonight we will be safe and there will be a home for us, and it will be fine. And this was in the midst of COVID. And then he had an idea to make a call about 3 hours later, an inspired idea, as we were sitting by that point in a field, in nature, open heart, no fear. And an idea of a call came through. And by that night, we were safe. We were in a home. It wasn't the place that we would have really loved to have been in. And yet we were both so excited to be there, to be safe, and to be in a home. And from that moment onwards, we both will individually, I say this for myself, I made a vow that my life was only going to increasingly get better and better and better, and that I would open up to really, really using these practices and testing them. If this didn't work, try it another way. If that didn't work, add something else in. Do the forgiveness work. Release what isn't wanted. Open up to the new, and to really use this, because this was with me in one of my 8 bags. If you can dream it, you can do it. And it's often in those times when everything's going seemingly well that we can kind of put the spiritual practice on hold, or even put our dreams on hold. And yet I'm kind of challenging me and you now to say, what if we could build such a deep practice for ourselves, that non-negotiable, where we open up to the possibilities that we don't even know that could be here, that are already here, that we catch that vision for our lives, and to live into that vision, and knowing that there will be times when we are vulnerable. And that is a part of the adventure as well, because we are being proved. As we prove it, we are being proved. Do you know that in the Bible, the word prove is written in there between, I mean, I've looked this up a few times, and every time I get a different answer. It's kind of between 70 and 100 times, I suppose, depending on which version. The word prove is written in there. We are being invited to prove God, to know God, to lean into God, not run away from, thinking in our humanness that we have the answers, because those answers will be a limited view of our lives. Thomas Troward, who was, is practically, the one of the major teachers of or inputs into the religious science, philosophy, science of mind and spirit. The textbook is jam-packed with Thomas Troward. We can tell where it's Thomas Troward if we read that book, where it's Thomas Troward, where it's Curtis Hopkins, where it's Emerson. We get into the flow. And I know that when I'm reading about law and order, I'm reading the words of Troward. And Troward was a judge. He lived in India and he was from the UK. And with all of his teachings and all of his unravelings, he knew there was a law. This wasn't a political law, the government's law, the law of life, the creative law, that God inspired that creative law. So the law is like it does as we believe. We are planting and seeding our words, our thoughts, our values, our intentions into the law. And he had one student. That student was called Genevieve Bertrand, and she wrote a book called Your Invisible Power, which I have purchased and I'm reading it on Kindle, and it's beautiful. And she talks about Troward all of the time, just as Holmes does, Ernest Holmes. He knew, Ernest Holmes, when it comes to power, he knew that everything that lives behind everything, the energy of all of that is the law, and that we're one with the law. We can't get away from it. It's not something that's just goes to sleep at night. It's 24/7. It's there all the time. So why not use that power and open up to the possibilities and be vulnerable? That song at the beginning, I love that song. You know, it said, why wait until why keep it in your sleep? Why not use it? Why bring your daydream into life? And yet I know that what I do as I go to sleep is really, really, really powerful. The power of visualization. And I don't think we talk enough about visualization here in general, throughout the communities of centers for spiritual living. I'm a great fan of visualization. I know that for Michael Beckwith and the four kingdoms of awareness of consciousness, that visualization is something that can be used as we're kind of getting into this philosophy or wanting to change our lives. And yet we are invited to visualize it differently, to see it differently. There's a power in that. Even when we are open to the vision, we then can visualize that vision and call it in and use the power of this one mind, the power of the mind, which is not separate from you or me or anything, or Reverend Gina or Sonia or any of us here. It's one thing that's happening, and we can use it. As Ernest Holmes uses this word, specialize, and so does Genevieve Bertrand in her book. We specialize it. I love that. And we use it. We become the living idea of the divine. We allow ourselves to surrender to what is already here and open up to receiving, accepting, and receiving it. Whether we're doing the washing up, or whether we're planning a huge kind of momentous ministry or movement or business or whatever it is, we get to use God. We allow God to use us. We're given the idea, and we believe the idea, that there's not enough and we're not good enough and there's limitation and there's lack. That's an idea that we choose as a seed in our own mind, as a seed that we nurture in our own minds. And I'm inviting us right here and now to ditch that idea and to get back to basics and know that in the mind of God, all is possible right now. Your dream, your idea is as valid now as it ever will be. When I was sitting in that car, I had no idea I'd be here on this screen right now. And I had to journey quite an adventure for that to happen. And yet being prepared to be vulnerable and say yes, and to learn from those seeming mistakes and to keep going and keep going with your dream. That's when God reaches back and gives back. When we reach out, when we ask, when we know, God reaches back and the way is made clear. Those crooked ways are made clear for us. So we work with the divine. It's not something separate. We open our hearts. We visualize. use spiritual mind treatment, and create a container of faith, knowing that as we open up and expand to what is really here for us to be and to do right now in our lives, that the law is always, always saying yes. I've started tuning into Wayne Dyer. Love Wayne Dyer. And he says, one of his quotes, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. We've heard this so many times. In the Talmud, we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. Emerson, we become what we think about most of the time. And here we go. A Greek philosopher. It's not events that disturb our minds, but how often we think of those events. So we are the ones that are at power right here and right now. And we are the ones that can open up to the possibilities that God already knows of who we are and what is ours to do and how we are here to be. We believe in science of mind that we have control of conditions through the power of the one mind. So we use God. We're always being invited to use and to prove to ourselves. And this is an eternal journey. So we kindly are kind to ourselves. We're gentle with ourselves. And each moment we open up to the infinite possibilities, knowing that we are loved. So I will just close here, knowing that as Jesus says, and as Ernest Holmes quotes quite regularly, it is done unto us as we believe, and that also we can be transformed by the renewal of our minds. So my kind of question for us, for you, for me, for each of us right now is dare to dream. What is that dream? What feels impossible? What feels, oh, that could never happen? If that is the feeling, then that is that's seeded in your heart. Yes, if you can dream it, you can do it. And I know that as you have faith and belief in that dream and in yourself and the faith of the divine, then everything in the mind of God is possible right here and right now. Thank you. And so I'm inviting myself and us to be with this, to close our eyes for a few moments here. Taking a breath in and being with this breath, exhaling out, as I know that there is one power presence here right now. This one thing that I know is this invisible, ineffable essence of all life. So many names. Goddess, God, love, creative intelligence, divine wisdom, the ultimate. It is the one thing that is the idea of all of this life. It is the one thing that sets in motion this idea of all life, that shows up in so many different ways. And so I know it as I look at the sea, as I look at the sky, as I look at the stars at night. Beyond my human mind, this one thing is doing things and creating things and ideaing things into life that, I may think are impossible, and yet they are here. It is all possible in the mind of God. And as I know this, I know I am this, of course. I'm unified as this, whole, perfect, and complete as God is, I am. So as I open my heart to this knowing, accepting this, I lift in my mental equivalent. I know that right here and now all is possible as my life. And so as I see this and know this and feel this, I get into the feeling of this oneness, that here and now on this call, here and now as this celebration is here, as Reverend Gina and Sonia put forward Center for Spiritual Living Greater Boston, that this is a possibility. Choosing and deciding to be here, to be woven in to the love that is here. And I realize that this love is infinite, it is immense. And that as love, I know all is possible. So as I open my heart to the greatness of this love, I open my heart and my mind to the possibilities that are here right now. As me, as Reverend Gina, as Sonia, as each and every one listening, as each and every one not listening or viewing, I speak my word, knowing this truth, knowing that in God, as God, all is possible. And so the great divine idea of life comes through right now. I speak in the I as I know that there is only one. And as I speak as this one, I know that this is for each of us right now. That the possibilities that I may feel sometimes are impossible, where I may think that fear comes in, or I feel scared, or that I'm not enough, or don't have the right skills or knowledge or tools, or blah, 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 whatever it is, I know that this is not true in the mind of God. In the mind of the divine, this goddess, God, love, this one thing, all is possible. So I see this great vision unfolding as my life, as each of our lives. I see that we tap in to the soul, we tap into the spirit, tap into the vision, that this power that is unchangeable is as I am, and it is as each of us are right here and right now. Putting aside any idea that this cannot be, I know that this truly is, as I know that this is the one truth of the divine, life affirming, all giving, all goodness. As God involves itself into my life, into each of our lives, I know that I and you and each of us become that great spiritual detective, explorer, experimenter, taking on board these practices, being willing to be vulnerable and saying yes to the greater vision for our lives. And I know that CSL Greater Boston is such a beacon of light, the entity of this, as it brings itself forward with the beautiful classes and teachings and opportunities and prayer partnerships and ministering from Reverend Gina. I know that this center is blessed, as I know that each and every one of us are. So I let this go with gratitude in my heart for this demonstration, knowing that God is here, that the law is always saying yes. And I say yes, letting it be. And so it is. And now it is. And love it is.
Saying that there is that within me which knows the answer to what I call the problem. I turn from the problem and receive the answer. I believe and accept that I am not only guided into right action, I am compelled into right choice and action on that choice. This isn't a dream. This isn't just a belief. This is a dynamic assertion which is so, and it's operating in and through my affairs right now, and I accept it right now. Now let us do something which we all should wish to do, I feel. I know we do. To feel that every person we meet, everyone we touch, everything we do shall bless and heal, that every situation we contact shall be made whole and happy, and every person blessed by our presence. This, I think, is the greatest good we could hope for, and this we do accept right now.